Okay, I'm talking about the second part of Evelina today, and I hope you're still really liking it. I want you to notice a couple of things that I hope we get to talk about on Friday. The first is that we've moved into this weird space where Evelina was totally ignorant of the rules and expectations of people in the city, which is to say that the novel was playing up the country-city divide. And it was fine for her to be in the city because she was in very good hands, but she had to learn the ways and the manners. In this section, she's disgusted by those who don't know the ways, the rules, and the manners of living in the city. So she's now in a position of knowledge that that sort of has displaced her ignorance in the volume, in the section that we read before. The second thing about that is that it's totally related to class, and the Brontons and Madame Duval are extremely, she calls them something like low-born and vulgar. Vulgar meaning common, that they are not well-bred, well-educated. So she now is judging them based not just on how, let me rephrase, being immoral, like flirting with Mr. Smith or being extremely rude to Mr. McCartney, for example, those are attached to characters who are vulgar, low-born, ill-bred, so that virtue and class become intimately connected here. The other thing that's true about virtue in this section is that it gets aligned with good manners, good behavior. Let's see if I can find exactly the section I wanted to point you to. Yes, on page 166, which is right before letter 9, so at the end of letter 8, the Reverend Villers says to Evelina, remember, my dear Evelina, nothing is so delicate as the reputation of a woman. It is at once the most beautiful and the most brittle of all human things. And this takes the place of like the hymen fetish in Pamela, where now whatever virtue is to do with reputation, and that has to do with behavior, and behavior specifically in the sense of acting not low class. Okay, at the same time, she's really nice to Mr. McCartney. So he seems to be the only person who's very poor, but he is, has tragically earned her sympathies, and this inclines her to treat him respectfully, and indeed he seems to deserve it, even though he is so poor. Okay, so the way class and reputation work to sort of become whatever we've been calling virtue. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the way that masculinity gets configured. So we have Sir Clement, we have Lord Orville, and she says of Sir Clement on the bottom of 179, this is right underneath the verses, so right near the end of chapter 11. She's talking about Mr. Smith. She says, it's true, it is true, no man can possibly pay me greater compliments or make more fine speeches than Sir Clement Willoughby. Yet his language, though too flowery, is always that of a gentleman, and his address and manners are so very superior to those of the inhabitants of this house that even Sir Clement, who basically kidnapped her, is at least polite. He belongs to polite society. And that's what's happening here along the class divide. So we get Sir Clement, who's maybe marginally excused. We get a lot of the men who pay compliments but don't respect her reputation. We get Lord Orville, who's becoming more and more appealing and attractive. And so we've talked about women all term, and I want to talk about Evelina a lot, as well as the other women in here too, but starting to think about, for example, maybe the different men in this section who get more roles that aren't as simple as would-be rapist, and then bossy husband, for example, or guy who falls in love with prostitute, guy who comes back and marries prostitute. But that while we're getting into psychological realism, we can think about the roles that men are given as well. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I'll see you tomorrow.